What's up, everyone? Thanks so much for tuning in for this episode of Startups Unedited, joined by the one and only funnelholic, Craig Rosenberg, who is Chief Platform Officer at Scale Venture Partners. And also, you are a podcast host of The Transaction, which features the best go-to-market minds on planet Earth. I don't know about Mars yet. You might do Mars, Venus later, the way things are going. But welcome to the show once again, my friend.
Oh man, I have done all of your shows,
You
I
have.
think.
You
And
have.
there's this one that I was looking at, just looking up us. We did on YouTube, and I was wearing a pink shirt in the original Topo office. But it's actually one of my favorite interviews I ever did. And we had this at Topo. We had this office that was in a medical building. It was so sterile in there. It was amazing. And Scott Albro, the CEO, he tried to redesign the room, and he had these pictures everywhere and all this stuff, and it just brought back incredible memories. But yeah, man, it's good to be on. Have I been on Startups Unedited before?
You
No.
have
Oh, I
multiple
have.
times.
Okay.
But you're
Okay. All
talking
right.
like 10 years ago, right? So yeah,
Jesus.
you've been on a couple of them, but you were like basically when I was just using like Google Hangout or whatever it
Yes.
was. Yeah, you could see the Google like icon on the screen.
And I probably froze like 10 times going, yeah, yeah. All right.
Totally.
Anyways, great to, it's all, dude, you are one of my favorite guys of all time. There's nothing better than hanging out and talking to you. And
Likewise,
so
likewise.
let's do it.
Well, I want to dive deep into this big question, which is, can traditional SaaS companies survive in this AI centric world? And then, if so, how? And I think the perspective here is you have a bunch of existing organizations, incumbents that are kind of using their legacy products to go to market and try to integrate AI, right? You have startup founders who are falling into a couple different camps, right? I think the first camp is they have traditional SaaS products that they built a little bit before this current iteration of the LLM boom. And then the world changed overnight and they're trying to figure out how to actually catch up. And then you have investors, right, who are trying to figure out like there are still some hybrid SaaS and some traditional SaaS that still looks interesting. But to one of the things that you mentioned to me the other day, which was, will these horizontal platforms just take them out overnight, right? So, what's your take on this?
When we talked about it, I'm like, it's so easy. Let's go talk about it. It's not. You know, I'm trying to look up the data. A guy named Omar Akhtar, I don't know if you know him, but he's doing like demand gen benchmarking, and a lot of the traditional SaaS guys are, their growth levels are, that used to be 40% growth, and they're in the, call it 15 to 20% now. And it's just, dude, it's not it. Look, we have like a combination of events here happening, right? One is you have the AI boom. Two is you have one of the most like uneven buying environments of all time. Like if you that's like a right there. Those two things are a not apocalyptic, but it's like nuclear, right? Because right now buyers don't know how to buy. They've got there's global economic uncertainty, which we don't, it's things are so crazy right now, we don't even talk about. We talk about like, so from talking about SaaS trying to survive, your folks, people we know that were just so doing so well for so long, you know what I mean? And it got hard. And it wasn't just AI, it's a combination of AI plus a wild buying environment. And a change in how people operate. So those three things all come together and create like a really challenging environment, for, it's basically, my point is it's hard for everyone.
Yeah.
Okay. So, look, I think a lot of the traditional SaaS people have to have the ability to launch, you just have to have an AI answer. There are exceptions though, which I'll talk about in a sec. And then we'll talk about tactics. But like, you know, I'll give you an example of someone who's done a good job, Intercom with Finn.
Mhm.
I mean, the and just even if you look at the little things like on how they market it, like the CEO of Intercom, it says, CEO of Intercom, and it's like building Finn AI. They do have to walk this fine line, but that's like brilliant. It's like, look, I've got this thing that you're used to, that has a brand that I have, you know, tens of thousands of customers, whatever the number looks like. And then I'm building this new thing. That's indicative of both like how you have to roll right now, a really nice way to market things. It's really, you can't transform yourself overnight because you're in this conflict here because you got these folks that rely on your, brand. So you do have to build an answer. And if your platform's not built to just put, AI as your next sort of product iteration in, then you have to be building, something new alongside of whatever you have. And that's hard right there. The second thing though, is I have
Mhm.
seen SaaS companies, I certainly know some in our portfolio that are doing really well because frankly, one, there's either like real vertical, um, they're either vertical software or a commitment to a vertical. So they've isolated themselves into an area that they know and understand, which sort of it's like loosely tied to the second one, which is, look, value's value. If you know many of the AI companies still haven't figured out what problem people are actually trying to solve. If you flip this whole conversation around and say, well, how does these 10,000 AI companies that launch each week go to market? Well, you have to solve a customer problem that they care about. And many of the traditional SaaS companies already do that.
Mhm.
And like, if you take like that into account, I think it's great. The other thing is going up to the enterprise, like being there already, being in the up market where, look, the most important thing for them is stability and the ability to, deliver whatever problem is they're trying to solve, deliver the answer at scale. Well, you're in play because those are folks that, even though they'll look at the new shiny thing, but like it's not ready to deliver what they need to deliver. And so right now it's better to be, vertically focused, because it's almost the same as being in the enterprise, even if you're like a small business mid-market side, because you just really have a lock and a reputation around solving a very particular problem, and the sort of mental inertia around trying to find an AI product which is going to do things way quicker, way different, probably ultimately better, but doesn't have the comprehensive ability to do what you need to get done. That you still have the advantage there. It's you do have SaaS companies that were substandard. They were just the first to market and ran ahead of everyone because the winner took all. And those folks are just plain and simply going to have issues. So those things are, that's kind of how you look at it from a, overall answer to your question. I'm actually not even sure I answered the question, but except targeting matters. uh the oldest, most important thing in the book is, do you solve the problem better no matter what than whatever's out there in the
Mhm.
market? And for many of them, it's still, the answer is yes. And then in the meantime, while you're doing that, now you're integrating AI either into a platform that's flexible enough to do that, or you're rebuilding to have an
Mhm.
AI answer for the market. those are kind of the three things. The other thing is your CAC will likely not be. Hold on one sec. Getting my lunch. Hi, thank you. You're the best. You're on video on a podcast. No, I love it. It's great. It makes me look like a big timer. I feel like I'm. Yeah, I should have
You are a big timer.
I should have had her put on a tuxedo jacket and like bring it in, like holding it like this. So anyway, those are kind of but the CAC, it's going to be harder. Like the other issue so I mentioned the thing in the start and I didn't use it as my structure to talk through things, but like, for those SaaS companies, not only is your growth rate going to change, but your CAC is going to get higher. It's just harder to acquire customers, because that goes back to my buying environment thing, is buyer research habits and buyer consumption of channels has changed. And you just you got to decide, like, how are you going to live with it? Like, for example, so I mentioned the Omar's data, he found that like the paid channels were still, sort of the best channels. And it was like, but they're expensive. But you know what? If they're still delivering, you have to pay that expense. So your customer acquisition's up, but you got to do it. Brand matters, obviously. And for many of them, like that's a juggle, but they do it. You can't, on the sales side, I think you can't fake AI. You can't dismiss young AI competitors. You just have to refocus people back on their problem. Mm-hmm. This is always a problem with sales guys, and by the way, I say that lovingly because I, get it. But like their first instinct is, well, why would you want some unstable AI thing? And you can't just say that. You have to say, well, let's refocus you back on what you're trying to solve. And let's look at this like clear-eyed together on what you're trying to solve and what can potentially solve your problem. Mm-hmm. Because if you do that positioning correctly, then people are going to realize if your job, part of the buying environment issues with things so unstable, people are worried about their job, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so the most important thing for the buyer is to make sure that it works. That's it. Yeah. So if you're a traditional SaaS company, that you have to refocus the buyer back on their problem, back on what they're trying to achieve. And look, if they want to go with new, shiny new AI thing, you're not going to win. So unless you can refocus them back on their problem, you'll still win deals, right? So, just thinking about kind of how you attack it, I think that's, just some of the things that I'm seeing. But anyway, I don't know, man. I just talked for a long time. It's complicated. I got a buddy who's a CRO at a SaaS company that's done pretty well. He's like, I've never been more popular in my life because I got VCs, I got private equity guys, I got CEOs calling me all the time saying, how are you doing it? And he's like, only growing at 20%, but he's still surviving the SaaS apocalypse or whatever he calls it. And, he's like, that's where I got the sales thing. He's like, look, you just have to you have to know your market, know the problem they're trying to solve, and focus people back on that. And that's not different than anything before, but it gets crazy out there. Mm-hmm. And if people's jobs are on the line to make sure it works, then that's something that you have to, your product can probably solve for. But anyway, All right. Back to you, George. After I just ranted for no reason.
No, thank you for bestowing your wisdom here. One thing that has been coming up in recent conversations, Doug Landis, who was at Box, and then he was at venture firm, and now he's got his own thing going on. We were chatting. He was on the show a couple of weeks ago, and we were chatting about this topic. Of course, it's top of mind. And he said something that was really interesting, and it mapped with kind of my reality, which is he was on a webinar. He was like the guest speaker on this webinar, and there were about 250 go-to-market leaders or executives on this webinar, and he polled the audience. He asked, how many of your or what percentage rather of your stack is still traditional SaaS? And so Doug asks me the question. He says, what do you think the answer was? And immediately I was like, I'm going to say 50-50. He said, no. It was like, I think he said 80 or 85. I know it was in the 80s. So essentially what he was saying was the vast majority of people's go-to-market stack was still
Yeah.
traditional SaaS, and it wasn't AI. Now that might change, right? Like moving forward, but I think there's this idea that everything is AI right now. Even this tool that I'm using to record, it has an AI function. I don't use it. You know why? Because it sucks. It doesn't work, right? It's supposed to
Yeah.
auto edit the videos, and it doesn't do it well
Yeah.
at all, right?
Yeah.
So there's no AI I'm using to actually do this right now, and that's really indicative of what I'm seeing out there. I'm advising a lot of companies out there, and we're still buying Gong, we're still
Yeah.
buying Outreach. No one uses whatever Outreach is AI thing. They're using the traditional stuff. We don't have AI bot SDRs for a lot of these companies. I don't know anyone actually. 0% of the companies I'm advising right now actually have AI agents doing these particular things. Now, again, that might change, but that is the reality. So it kind of throws me in this loop internally, going, well, what is really going on? I know the Lovables and those folks are doing really well. That hasn't ever existed, right? Like the ability to build those products using AI. So I do think that in those categories, it makes a lot of sense. But that's the reality that I'm seeing.
Yeah. So, so the real question. So actually, I'm not sure how you would, but let me. So yeah, because look, you can't lose your job. I don't. I think if you ask them two other questions, is uh, one is if for your next project, would you look at AI along with SaaS? The answer would be absolutely. And then number two is, I don't know how we do this, but like, I wonder if the percentage might not be high because you're going to keep a lot of the traditional stuff in your SaaS stack, but it's all the core stuff that's part of your go to market and your machinery. But one, there's been a lot of churn. Okay, that's not what you're talking about. You're talking about core, like if they're using Gong and they like it, they're going to do it. Okay. They're going to keep going because they're used to it. It's integrated into their process. It's integrated into the way they work. Nobody's going to change it unless they're absolutely compelled to do it. But they will throw out, there was a lot of SaaS that was a pretty good idea, but not a great idea, that didn't add enough to their lives, that just is gone, right? The other thing too is like let's see, let me just see if I can call up the data, but you and I talked about this. Uh, Gosh, I don't know the last time we talked, but like maybe they wouldn't call it part of the stack, but something like 90% of marketers are using AI in their day to day, right? Call it 70% of sales is using AI in their day to day. So yeah, it hasn't taken over. Let's just use a marketing example. It hasn't taken over Marketo. It hasn't taken over Salesforce. It hasn't, taken over Gong yet, right? So yeah, but people are using AI for a lot of, I would say, productivity. Like we are in like a productivity AI revolution right now. That's different, right? So like maybe your first question was a bit of a setup. It's like, are people ripping out, you know what I mean? It's like, are people ripping out their, sales and engagement app yet? Well, some are, right? But like, that the main point is they will, as the use cases emerge, right? And it's really compelling, then they'll do something like that. But like in the meantime, everyone's you have, for your job, you have to keep it safe. A bunch of folks churned. that weren't adding value, that were not part of those core apps. And in the meantime, AI is being used for a lot of, primarily for productivity, account research. Well, that's obviously a big one. Even though they may not always have the AI SDR send it, as you said, you don't see that as much. Um, they are using it to craft and to help put together their messaging. Clay is doing really well. That's about, data. We found that, with data, those folks that are using it for data as one of their sort of complex use cases, those are folks that are, seeing some of the better results. So it's like, no, the sort of core stack sort of has remained in place as it should until things really prove themselves. That's like too dangerous. But in the meantime, a lot of the less risky areas, those things, AI is prevalent. So if you ask differently those questions, I think you might get a better indicator of how AI is being used. So you see what I mean by that, or was that really convoluted?
No, absolutely.
Okay.
And one other thing that I'm seeing is, actually, I just in the last 2 months set up Gong and Outreach. So although folks are not, ripping out, well, some are, to your point, folks are also net new buying these traditional SaaS systems as well, right? So
Yeah,
they're
but
not.
I don't think Gong is considered by the market to not be AI. What do you think?
Interesting. We have not used, well, I can't say that I have a full picture, obviously, but I think that at least of the organizations that I've set it up within it recently, they're not using the AI functionality, right? They're just using the traditional call recording stuff and things like that. And I think maybe it may be that they've done such a good job of integrating it into the product, so it doesn't look like it's like this separate thing. So that's another thing that that we might have to consider as well. Like maybe there's like the prompt line that's in there, that's not obvious that it is technically Gen AI or the LLM.
Yeah, for sure. Just by the way, back on the AI SDR, if I may, there's an interesting, I think the AI SDR conversation's interesting. So as you said, I think some versions of use cases have emerged there, but that's my point, is like, if we're still for like rip outs and for beating incumbents, like, or a legit use case has to emerge. So like it has to make sense. In the AI SDR case, the inbound SDR, so like you could see this in bigger companies that have, because remember, for AI to work, you have to understand what works. The issue with a lot of the AI when it first came out was everyone assumed it would be better, so it would figure everything out. But actually, this is like any technology buying, which is, I know what we need to do. I know in the sales case or marketing case, I know who it is to, right? I have an understanding of what it is we need to sell to them. Okay. And now I just need to be able to refine that and do it better. Now AI can work. And then, so we see a lot more sort of on the AI SDR side, inbound. So high volume of inbound has been fundamentally a human project to do incredibly mundane things. Make sure that they're not already in the database, figure out where they need to go, and send a templated message. That's a good role for AI. Outbound, no. It like, it's just not ready yet, but it can queue you up, right? It can be used to queue you up, and it can help. But as you said, it hasn't taken over the world, which was its initial promise. It just has really specific use cases carved out. I've also seen it work where the brand has already sort of established and taken off, and this is just about regulation and ensuring that a message gets out. So like if you get a message from this is a bad example from an SAP that has been around for so long, if you write them an email, the level of creativity required is less than that of someone who's unknown. And that's AI can help you after you've figured out who it is, what you need to sell to, and those things, and enhance some of the abilities you need to get it out on time, to regulate message, to do all these things. But you've established enough brand they can be successful. For a startup, man, you got to figure this stuff out first, and like that's probably why you don't. It's not AI SDR, it's versions of it. It's various areas of it that are in play. So sorry, I just wanted to talk about it, but it is a really interesting example on the go-to-market AI and the go-to-market tech side of kind of how things are evolving, which is it's still all about the use case. It's still all about, can I solve the pain better than what's out there? And on the Gong side, I do agree with you that at the end of the day, most people use a really simple use case of it. But many people are used to it. I hate to say it, these days you don't get fired if you buy Gong, and it's pretty expensive, man. But the value is sort of established in the mind of the executive team. Many salespeople are used to it. And as you said, there's AI there, and I think more and more people will try it. But like, it is interesting because when I ask people what AI do you use, a lot of people do say Gong. So I guess it's
interesting.
Yeah, I don't know. We're
awesome.
This is a wild time.
Very wild time. Craig, thank you so much for being on the show and sharing your wisdom. For the folks out there, follow Craig on a couple of different channels. I know that, of course, LinkedIn, but go to Apple Podcast and Spotify to be able to check out the transaction. And are y'all on YouTube as well?
Yeah. That's our big channel. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, go to YouTube, subscribe, learn, enjoy the entertainment value as well. Matt and Craig are some of the most charismatic folks in the space. So you'll definitely enjoy it, and have a wonderful, wonderful day, everyone.